Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will charge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign barriers. Ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back, and we're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Okay. Okay. I'd like to take a look here. It's in front. He's not a conference mic. My entire cabinet is here, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night in Florida, we have a majority of 7, and sounds like a lot will be Senators, Congressmen, thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it. United States, non-monetary to for industries, and in many cases, non-monetary barriers were worse than monetary ones. They played the country exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they hated us, and they said we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the trade representative on foreign trade barriers. And I was talking a lot of work for something. It's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what for with no response from the United States of America. The example, the tax. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5% on foreign aid. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations. As a result of these colossal trade barriers, 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in 1 million to the United States. For very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that friend and foe, and in many cases the friend is worse than the foe in terms of such imbalances that our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all. Doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. It's been a he understands this is economist. A few words, please. What do you think?
In Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized, and Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And we won almost all of them, but we're in Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you all. The photos were fantastic. Good. I would say thank you very much. You'll be very soon. You probably see what's happening with all of the, not only car companies, but car companies in particular, with out. Anything like that. Today's action, we're all standing up for our great farmers and all over. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. Do the first can of milk, they do the first can of milk at a low price. That is bad, and it's 275%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, oh, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, you know, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say you got to work for yourselves, and you got to? This is why we have the big deficits. This is why we have that amount of debt that's been placed on our the last number of years. And we're really not taking it anymore. Non-tariff barriers, the European Union bans imports of most American poultry. You understand? They say, we want to send you our cars, we want to send you everything, but we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them. We're doing the same thing right now. China charges American rice farmers in over quarters called 65%. South Korea charges 50%. Actually, they charge different, from 50% to 513%. And Japan, our friend, charges us 700%. But that's because they don't want us selling rice and other things. Who can blame them, Madam Secretary? Agriculture, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50% once we got involved. They were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further. We charge 2.8% for so many things. Other countries are charging 200%, 300%, 400% for it. Imposing tariffs is made nations poor, that country would be eliminated the first line, very strong, but the American people are paying a very big price from 1789 to 1913 for attack back. There was bullshit. This has been so that the Commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money, so we didn't know what to do. It was a problem to have. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money. In 1999, it all came to with the Great Depression, and it was a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. Ran rather intricate because of him, and think of him in many ways, but it led to beyond service, you know. But it's not too late any longer. We're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again, and be wealthy as a country, because they've taken so much of our wealth away from us. Which can be very wealthy, and we're getting smart. Nearly a century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay. And then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first. In Sleepy Joe Biden's last year in office, the United States hemorrhaged 100,000 manufacturing jobs, and the number was going through the roof at levels never seen before. And our trade deficit reached a record $1.2 trillion, which is unheard of. Since the beginning of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, it was a horror show. I was able to terminate it. They all said you'd never be able to get it out. We had to get approval from Congress to get it terminated. We had to live with that deal. It was the worst trade deal ever made by far. But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room. 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than think of this, than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you got ripped off with your salaries. My auto worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less, so how can anybody be upset? They will be because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough, great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office, right over there, right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%, and much higher for certain items like cars, you know, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades, and it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China and charged them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs. And they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand. And the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. Trade is not fair. And he said, I know that, I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, oh, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. Sri Lanka, 88%. So what we're doing is we're taking not the full, good job. I think you better take it with you. It's not going to last very long. I'm not giving it to the cabinet. I'm giving it to the other worker. You fellas, get it. That's it. That's it. They deserve it more than our cabinet. But you see the numbers fair. Establishing and that be the countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum the product coming in in terms of a lot of things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do. To pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world right now, the biggest market in the world. We had a great country in terms of the economics. We were doubling up on China. We were doing so well. Nobody was going to catch us, but so much of it slipped away over the last 4 years under Biden. I campaigned policy throughout last year, and today that we made it. It was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept. Any company that objects to a comment again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. I call this kind reciprocal. It's not full reciprocal, it's a kind reciprocal. But if they complain, if you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, who drop your barriers. Don't manipulate your currencies. Is a bad, bad thing and very devastating. $10 billion American goods, tariffs, protection against those that do us economic harm. Many people can do us economic harm. Maybe not so obviously, but they were doing tremendous economic harm. They will get growth. The tariffs are growth like before, and it'll be something very special. Which I'm so looking and Brian, you might say, works for the plants for countries. Big ways. We have $61 billion on big plants, but it's going to be announced in the next few days. Already started work. Many big companies in the world. They made I came here to see me, and they wanted to know if they could have a press conference. I do as many as I can. I'm pretty busy trying to stop Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We got to stop. It's like shooting ships down out of the water, but not getting you kicked out. Mr. Secretary, not getting kicked out now. But, some of the companies that have already announced that committed to investment in. This is a company that built the factory in China. Apple spent $500 billion. They never spent money like that here. They're going to build their plants here. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced CSM, the biggest, important company in the world of chips for one, with from is investing $100 billion. The reason is one election of the tariffs, pay the tariff, and then pay it is no percentage of 100%. Now it's all in Taiwan, almost all of it's in Taiwan, a couple of other countries, but mostly in Taiwan. And we have 100%. We lost it because people that didn't do their job, they allowed it to be stolen from us. President Johnson, 27 billion, invested $100 billion. Wow. $20 Merck, various plants, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%. So. And we've never had, and this is after 2.5 months. This is came out with what everybody wanted to do. Television, a very respected automobile person, and he said, you know, because they're asking people, are they trying to get people and I can't. But he's finally an older guy, real pro, really top guy, with Lee Iacocca. He said, I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen, where somebody had the courage to go and do what has to be done. This is transforming our nation, our entire nation. It's with cars, that's built. We're going to become an industrial powerhouse. And he said that so beautifully today. In fact, I'm going to find out, I'm going to get a tape. And Bruce, I'm going to get that tape, and I'm going to send it to you out in Long Island, and you're going to play it for the people and all your union workers and your non-union workers out there. You got a pretty even split. But we have, so far, it looks like we're going to have about $6 trillion of investments, and you wouldn't do that in years in this country over the last number of years. $6 trillion, and that's going to be much higher by the end of the year. And think of what $6 trillion is. You wouldn't have even a small percentage of that under this other system. We're going to be an entirely different country, and it's going to be fantastic for the workers. It's going to be fantastic for everyone. There will never have been a transformation of a country like the transformation that's already happening in the United States of America. It's an incredible thing to watch, and it's incredible to meet with the top people, people that you read about, very wealthy people, or people that are great managers and executives and presidents of big public companies, and to watch the enthusiasm they have now that they didn't have. They gave up on our country. They went to foreign countries and they built. companies are pouring into our country at levels never seen before with jobs and money to follow, and it's really beautiful. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, the fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, you know, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. You know, it's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away. And maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers. But what you're going to see is you're going to see activity, that empty, dead sites, factories that are falling down. Those factories will be knocked down, and they're going to have brand new factories built in their place. They're not only talking about renovating, they're talking about brand new, the best anywhere in the world, the biggest anywhere in the world. I have a friend who builds car plants, and I said, I want to see the biggest and the best. He said, well, we have to go to Mexico. I said, no, I want to see it in the United States. He said, we're not building them in there. This is a year and a half ago during the campaign. He said, we're not building it. You'd have to go to Mexico. When I was starting to decide to run, and I went to #1 in the polls very rapidly, I want to say, like, let's say in the first hour. And then shortly thereafter, it looked like I was going to win, and the fake news was saying, oh, no, don't do this. What they don't know is if I didn't win, they would have really been in trouble, because nobody wants to read them anyway. But I tell you what, when it looked like I was going to win, I announced that I was going to be doing exactly what we're talking about today. Great consistency, actually, because I've been talking about it for 40 years, but because I saw what was happening 40 years ago. If you look at my old speeches when I was young, very handsome, my old speeches, and that people would say, I'd be on a television show, I'd be talking about how we were being ripped off by these countries. I mean, nothing changes very much. The only thing that changed were the countries, but nothing really changes. But you know, it's why it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be finally able to do this. If you look at China, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in my term, hundreds of billions. They never paid 10 cents to any other president, and yet they paid hundreds of billions, so much so that Biden couldn't do anything. They wanted to try and terminate it because he had a very special relationship with China. You know what the relationship was? He had a special relationship. But the numbers were so big, that they couldn't do it. So they did ease it up. They did things that they shouldn't have done. They made it a lot more comfortable for them, but they couldn't do it because the numbers were hundreds of billions of dollars, and I did that. And we were on our way to doing something like incredible. And then we had a very bad election happen, a very bad election. A lot of bad things happened. So when I said we got to do it again, I said we have to make it too big to rig. And we made it too big to rig, and we won in records, and it was a monumental win. And it was such an honor to see so many of you, like Brian and your friends, here with us to celebrate, and to more importantly celebrate what we're doing, because that wouldn't be a full celebration if we didn't do this, because this will be an entirely different country in a short period of time. It'll be something the whole world will be talking about it. The critics made the very tired predictions earlier this year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years. And the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks. And the first week, I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said, eggs have gone up at like 250%, and you can't get eggs. And they were going crazy. And I said, I just got here. And then we got to work on eggs, and we got to work on everything. And our great Secretary of Agriculture, you did a fantastic job. Brooke Rollins, she did a fantastic job. And as I said before, the price of eggs dropped now 59%, and they're going down more, and the availability is fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that. We want to, and you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, and I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot, and energy costs now are down. Groceries are down. Gasoline is way under $3, and people are beginning to be able to buy things and live again. We brought prices way down. We created 10,000 already in a few weeks, new manufacturing jobs. And it was that took place in 1 month, numbers that they haven't seen in a long time. We had virtually no inflation under my term. We had virtually no inflation for 4 years, but after transitioning over to Sleepy Joe, it went from almost non-existent to the highest in the history of our country. They had the highest inflation in the history of our country. Bad policy, a lot of bad things happened. How about allowing millions and millions of people to pour into our country with open borders, where it's so sad to see even now, and I see our great Secretary of and Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that want to, they don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought. It's done a fantastic job. The best border, was my and we had records then. We had the best, safest border 4 years ago. The best border was. Now you've matched it and done it, and we're going to get it down the right way. And we want people, by the way, to come into our country, but we want them to come in through a legal process. We want to come in legally. People need their legal plans. Workers and teachers and non-people and everything. Will people come in? They recommend we want to come in. They have the capability of living in our country. People that hate our country, we want them in our country. And we're going to pass the largest cuts in American history. And that's what we're bringing on market process. And we'll not buy Medicare or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country was heading for a collapse under the people that you saw. They were horrible. And one of the reasons why my highest approval rating, I think they're comparing me to the worst administration in our countries. Then Karoline on taking the next step to pass the plan for one beautiful big tax fantastic. And by the way, for the car, we're asking for so if you build the car only in America, we do it, Brian. If the car is not built in America, you don't get the interest rate deduction. If you build a car, if you buy a car, if it's built in America, then you get an interest rate deduction, tax deduction, and that's a big thing. That's going to be a big thing. I think that's going to pay for itself very quickly, that deduction. Like that. It did, and I'm very happy it didn't, because now I can say that was my idea. But we got to show and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. And all of the other things that the Senate budget plan gives us, along with working, they're working, Mike, the we need to hear priorities, tax cuts, spending cuts, energy, and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come. And we said, let's just do it and let's get it done. And some guys will love it, and some guys will like it a little bit less because they're not getting what they're exactly, but it's a lot. Get this done, it'll be the most incredible bill ever passed in the history of our Congress and Senate. And congressmen, the senators and the congressmen, many of whom are here today, will be very proud of themselves. I really believe that. It's going to set us on a whole new prosperous path. We're going to where it oh boy, that's a nice group of people. But I like them. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That is my total support in the House plan. Clip, and as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me, and I'm sure it'll have my like every Republican congressman, senator must do it. We can't be separate. We get it done to get absolutely everything we can to take care of American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, and get this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. They come back. I'll be very happy. And you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day. Credit by a lot of people, actually. More in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing, in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people a day, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think that. Some days, and they say they're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated, and they're from other countries, but they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them, and we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back and you know, it's going to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. We have two documents here. Respect to imports from the
Not even Hail Mary.
The other is the big one, is the reciprocal tariff executive order that the president just spoke about at length. This is obviously a huge deal, and it's been an honor to be part of the team.
100万订阅大突破，台视新闻 TTVNews 感谢有你，重要直播随时掌握，时事新闻不漏接，一刀未剪，新闻看得更完整，国际重大事件 ，catch 时事最新脉动，按赞订阅，开启小铃铛。